All right, welcome back, guys. This one's going to be fun. We've only done this one other time. Actually, we've never done this specifically, but today we're recording Aussie brother and sister who has built a media career that spans 4 continents. She's climbed Machu Picchu, and by far the highest mountain to climb thus far has been raising 2 kids in the digital age. I will clarify that and certify that as well myself. She believes there's no such thing as I can't. And he, when he's not making ads, is drawing and painting. He hikes in a fern forest in Australia each year to reset. And he's recently built a sauna in his backyard. You need to come check that out. Jo, managing director at Omnicom, and Dov, executive creative director at IPG. Brother and sister, good to have y'all.
Thanks for having us.
And we were talking offline, and you guys, this is like the family reunion. Even though you live in the city, I'm kind of like the mediator here. So we're just going to talk about sibling life.
We promised to keep it light, Ian.
I love it. And look, the great thing about it is, as we, Jo, you and I have known each other over the years, working through the agency brand media side. Spent some time in Birmingham, Alabama, looking after a client back in the day, which was
fantastic. Was a lot of fun.
Yeah. But I have to say, this is super special to me, as we were talking offline, because my dad growing up was an artist, photographer, and I ended up in the corporate world. And then my brother, 13 months younger, best friend in the world, is an artist, way cooler version than me, tattoos, spacer, shout out to Eric Dallimore. And we have the best time, and it's kind of very similar. Although he's not in media, he's in the art space itself, owns a gallery. But people always jokingly say, like, hey, Eric's the cooler version of you. So my first question is who is the cooler version of each other?
Him, definitely him. Definitely. You can't tell with the beanie, definitely him.
I love it. So fun facts are always a blast, but Machu Picchu, that is no easy feat. Tell me about that and that experience and what led you to kind of go about that.
Yeah, so just before we get into that, Ian, I just want it to be on record. He did not point to me.
No, he didn't at all.
It's
on YouTube, so we didn't see that.
Okay, I'm just putting that out there. But
I have evidence of you saying it now, so that's good.
So let me talk about the cool experiences. Machu Picchu. That was fun. So yes, hiking, definitely back in the day, BC, definitely a lot of hiking. Machu Picchu was amazing. Did the 4-day trek. No cars, no trains. And I think the beauty of that is always to challenge ourselves. It goes back to there's no such thing as I can't do it. If it can be done, I am always open to exploring how to get it done. Same with Ben Nevis, crazy mountains, but and then obviously with bringing kids into this world, I fly solo, but I did it. If it could be done, want to be a mum, it got done. But yeah, it's tough these days. I mean, my kids are not on social media. I signed a pact that they wouldn't be before 16 years of age, but it's tough holding to that. There's a lot of peer pressure, as you know, with your triplets, I imagine.
Yeah, it's tough. We installed the Bark app, which I would recommend. But my kids are interesting. They have no desire to jump onto social media, but I'm hoping that trend plays out. With the world of people just being constantly consumed in their phone, they're fairly active. So I think that's a big part of it. Dov, for you, hikes obviously are a thing as well. I have to admit, I had to look up what a fern forest was, and then I had this like aha moment. But I know it's something a lot more special than just trees in a forest.
Yeah, I mean, I do that once a year. I go home once. I say home, I mean Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, where Jo and I grew up. And we know that area really well. So I know a few trails down there. There's one in particular that I do each year, and that is my yearly reset moment. So yeah, that's just become a ritual that I really enjoy every year.
So let's go back to childhood, because I never get to do this, and this is super exciting. I know when we were prepping on this, we jokingly said that you guys were latchy kids, which for the younger listeners, you probably have to define what a latchy kid is. But I feel like our generation, the three of us, that's what made us who we are. Like you did what you wanted, and you stayed within within reason. Sometimes maybe you didn't, but what was that experience like growing up, the two of you having, such a close siblings with you, and obviously in Australia, assuming you guys got into some trouble and had some exploring and adventures.
Do
I
you want
mean,
to go?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll kick it off. I mean, I think that we didn't appreciate it at the time because it was just how we grew up. Mum and dad ran a local butcher shop. They worked very, very hard. My mum was sort of the bookkeeper, front of store. My dad was the butcher in the back of the store. Um, Long, long hours. And we came home from school 4:20, thereabouts. There was tons of frozen meat for us.
Mhm.
Grabbed it, put it on the barbie, you made yourself dinner, and you were somewhat self-sufficient, did homework on your own. There was no tutors or people to help get you over the line. You figured it out. And that came with pros and cons. I mean, we were free to do what we wanted and hang out with our friends and explore. And for me, that sort of turned into a passion for creativity, largely born out of boredom, often. Um, and I think it manifests a similar way for Jo, where she could sort of figure out what she was interested in and what she enjoyed. Boredom does that. It
Yep.
focuses you.
Yeah, it's also, I guess, looking at what everyone else is doing, and it's like, damn, why am I doing that? Like, and not waiting for someone to give you permission to make the mistakes or to explore things. Like, if I wanted to do jazz ballet, I didn't give my parents forms to read. I just said sign here, and off I went and gave it a shot. And it was just figuring out what you needed to do and finding the shortest way to get there.
Who was the one that was always doing the right thing?
Jo, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
Jo is the pleaser. She's, if you couldn't already tell, she is the older sibling. Uh,
Oh,
and, there is one
you are
actually.
masking that bold spot, right, Dov?
There is. Never mind what's under the beanie. Just uh,
We
but
always
yeah,
look under the beanie.
yeah. But no, there's a sibling as well that's older than us too. So, but I think that I was an oops, and I came, later on, and I think my understanding is I got away with murder. My sisters would look
Yes.
at me, and by comparison, they knew that I didn't have to do the chores that they had to do, or I could get away with things, and yeah, she never let me forget it either.
Yeah.
That's true. But it's become quite circular right now because I would say that, Dovi, you're doing all of that in your current household. And so it all comes back like a
Yeah.
boomerang.
Yes.
I say that all the time. You're however you behaved as a child, that is exactly how you're a kid. So I'm feeling the wrath of that as well. So Davi, you kind of touched on it. The boredom side. I can relate to that. My brother and I, quickly got ourselves into. You guys will both appreciate this. So we grew up middle class at best, and always had this like passion for myself specifically towards ads. One of the first ads that I loved, probably 10, 11 years old, is the Absolute ads.
Oh,
And if you,
yes.
yeah, so you guys know the ads, and I've referenced them a lot on the podcast. But I was like a modern day bill poster in my bedroom. Is the top of my bedroom, I would circle all the Absolute ads. So we would collect magazines from parents, friends, and others. And then the other thing that we would do, actually, I bought all the old classic Calvin and Hobbes, and
Oh, yeah.
we would cut out each Calvin and Hobbes, and we would circle them around the room, and we would spend a lot of our time like putting up just giant pieces of paper, poster boards, and we would just draw. And then that was our room. And then we would literally reset every month, like rip everything off the wall and like do it again.
Oh, you had your own war room.
With that,
Yeah.
right. But what was you guys had that creativity spark early on. You both obviously ended up and are extremely successful in the ad space. But what was there a moment for both of you that was like, okay, this is my path, and I get most excited about doing this?
There's definitely a moment for me. I shared it with Joanne actually recently, and she had like an aha moment, sort of appreciating it from my perspective. But there used to be a show on when we were kids called Mr. Squiggle, and Mr. Squiggle was a marionette puppet, and he had a pencil for a nose. And so what would happen is on every episode, he would be presented with just a random squiggle, some lines and a triangle here and a squiggle over there, and it made no sense. And I remember watching Mr. Squiggle take these disparate elements and turn it into an image. He would connect this with this and add a little bit of that. And then there was a blackboard, which was a character, and the blackboard would say upside down, and you would turn this thing upside down, and boom, an incredible visual was right in front of you. He made sense out of nothing. And I didn't recognize that as advertising, or I didn't, but I just knew that I was drawn to the idea of creating order out of chaos, or taking a problem and turning it into something coherent and impressive and fun. And I started squiggling and doodling myself. In fact, at school, I would say, I would tell someone sitting next to me, do a little squiggle on a piece of paper. I'll turn it into something. And so we would start doing that at school, and then that turned into drawing, properly, and drawing turned into painting, and painting turned into building. So it's like if you give a mouse a cookie. But that was the impetus. For me personally, that program was transformational. I loved it.
Yeah. I love that you remember that too, and that's powerful. And Jo, you're probably sitting there watching him watch these shows and transform into that. How about for you, Jo?
Um, Definitely Mr. Squiggle was an inspiring moment, but I think for me it was less about that creative side. Ironically, for me it was more about the power of influence. Like it was always intrigued me what we don't have, our own free will. We don't make decisions independently. There are things as a child I was thinking we can be influenced by exposure to different people or different stimuli. And I'll never forget that when I went to study overseas and I did an international course in uni, my first entry into the world of university, and it was sociology class. And the very first class, he made us watch Breakfast Club and say, who do we associate with? And in going through that whole analysis, I realized, we all are very different. We're all exposed to different things. We all identify with someone else. Who would have thought that you would identify with, Molly Ringwald or whoever it was? And to understand that the power of influence was what intrigued me to figure out, like, how does this all work? And media became my first stepping stone into it.
Way ahead of your time too, because obviously now there's a massive shift towards media and focus on influencers and the whole influencer economy. And here you were way back in the day with Breakfast Club itself.
That's
So where was I know there's a story, so I want to kind of fast forward your first job in the agency world in Australia. Give us that story because I love how it kind of plays off of Davi, where you ended up as well.
Yeah, so when I came out of the university, like most kids, you're indestructible. You're so confident. So, you start at the top and you figure out where do you want to go. And so I reached out to the leading agency in Australia. I explored an opportunity to get in the door. I got in the door, and as soon as I was there, I was so excited. I mean, I was that kid who literally came in, don't know whether you remember, Dov, on a Sunday morning, I would be there. Every morning I'd be in there from 7 a.m. and I would be locking up at 8 p.m. at night, drinking Coca-Cola and kettle chips for dinner.
Mm.
And but I was rewarded for it, and that just got me more excited. So every 6 months I'd get a promotion. I'm like, this is fun. And then there was an internal competition they had to you had to write a campaign, do the media strategy, everything, and present it to leadership at the headquarters in Australia. And the winner got to choose an agency anywhere in the globe, one of their partner agencies, and to do a 2-week internship. So I was honored to win that prize and said, okay, I'm going to go to London. Went to London for 2 weeks, had so much fun, came back, said, I want to I wanted to transition to the UK office. But at that stage, no one was transitioning, and nobody wanted to go to Australia then. How times have changed.
Right.
But
Yeah.
so there was no, so I said, that's it. I'm so young. I just packed a bag and went over, knocked on door, got a job, and the rest was history. I just Kontiki toured my way through the world using my career as my stepping stone to get me there.
Yeah. And Dobby, for you, was your dad ever like, you're going to take over the family butchery? Was that ever a thought or a?
It's funny you should mention that because, he comes from a line of 7 generations
Hmm.
of butchers.
Wow.
And before that, it's accented by maybe rabbi, and then butcher, 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 continually going back. So perhaps there was maybe a vague expectation, but I don't think my dad wanted me anywhere near that sort of life. It was taking years off his life. It's such a tough, physically taxing, stressful business. So, there's a part of me that romances the idea of, the butcher's son, and could we have ever done that and built a business together? But it was just never meant to be. And as I said, I think I'm a creative at heart, so maybe I could have branded the business,
I was about
but
to say, you could have at least created the logo or
I
something,
could
right?
have done the logo. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think I'd be back there carving up meat. That's not my
Yeah.
bag.
So what was it? Was it the journey? Was it the insight? Was it Joe sharing to you and you kind of opened your eyes into like, whoa, this is because I think back to my early days, I didn't know what advertising was. I didn't know that
Right.
was a career opportunity. And it sounded like maybe yours was the same.
Yeah, Joe was the first one through the breach in terms of letting me know what advertising actually was, giving me some sort of definition of it. But so I knew, vaguely what advertising was just by watching TV, but I didn't know the components of it, how the sausage is made. That started to happen after I finished my college degree, which is in business, just by default, because if you don't know what to do, why not get a business degree? But then I, traveled after that. I ended up in the UK like Joe, backpack through there. I actually was staying in her attic while she was there.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and I applied on a whim once I was starting to, the ads in the UK are just so, it's dark humor. They're just so sharp and insightful, and I fell in love with short form storytelling then. As I said, the seed was always there as a child to do some form of storytelling, but in the UK it really started to crystallize and become a viable career. I applied for a scholarship at the D&AD, and I just so happened to get in. I was really lucky, and that program is an internship-based program, so it puts you in different agencies around the UK, where you get to learn different styles from creative directors. You start putting together your portfolio in the early stages. I was lucky enough to work at Saatchi at the time under David Droga
Oh,
when
wow.
he just got to that agency from Singapore. You know, um, when I moved back to Australia, I just so happened to get a job at J. Walter Thompson, where I was working under John Mescal of, Dumb Ways to Die fame. And when I came to America, I worked with other like, Rob Riley and Matt Eastwood, and really, my personal Mount Rushmore of creatives. I got to, be up close and personal with them and learn from them, learn what to do, sometimes learn what not to do. Um, but that it was the UK really where I started my creative journey.
Yeah. And Joe, for you, that had to have been fun to just be like, hey, yes, come in this space. It's interesting. I love the dynamic with the two of you. The short amount of time that I've gotten to know you, Davi, it's like the media buyer planning strategy side has to always struggle, and the creative folks are always like, hey, thanks for the format you bought here, like this is not going to work. But you the two of you growing up in the same household and just going two different directions, but now ending up basically in the same space, now ultimately within the same company itself. But touch on that, like creative versus media, your thoughts behind that, two sides of the same brain concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We both followed our natural instincts and ended up in the same industry, but it's like entering a house from two different doors. Um, and we don't work actually. We're same holding company, but so many different agencies within a holding company. We've never actually had the privilege, or lack thereof, I wouldn't know, of working together. We've been at separate, agencies, even separate industries,
Mhm.
often for big chunks of our career. But we are two sides of the same coin in terms of what we do. So we're always, riffing off each other, and I'm always going to Jo for advice or to ask her opinion about campaigns and see what she thinks, specifically from a media perspective. So yeah, there are two sides, but they have to complement each
Yep.
other. And if I come up with a campaign that just cannot land in a viable media landscape, I don't really have a campaign.
Mhm.
Right. And media's always being told, you're killing the vibe here, we're restricting creativity, whether it's because we have media specifications or budget limitations or whatever the case may be. But in actual fact, those are real challenges that we need to work collaboratively towards. And rather than stifle creativity, they should actually bring out the mastery of creativity when they're done right.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting too because, at Lamar, I always say we're the blank canvas where you get to do whatever you want. But oftentimes, I don't want to say we get disappointed, but my creative side, I get disappointed. I'm like, there's so much you could have done. I'll give a shout out to Stephen Leese, the co-founder of Gooder Sunglasses, and we just had a brainstorm this morning, and they are always like, what is what is the most obscure thing we're allowed to do, whether it's from a 3D perspective to the side to the top. What can we do and what can we not do? Don't ever tell me what we can't do. Just tell me what is the restrictions. And from a media perspective for you, Jo, you've seen the evolution of now the smartphones and what people advertising can do with that. But I'm not going to ask you what your favorite, although Davi already said that he's the more handsome, younger, and all the things. But I'm not going to ask you what your favorite media type is. But it's a much more complex world for you to plan out campaigns, strategize than back in the day when we were kids. It was like newspaper, TV, radio, and if you had a couple of cents left, you'd buy a billboard. But
Right.
now you have everything,
Yeah.
and then now it comes even more complex with the creative storytelling side of things.
So it's funny because, Ian, I've been in the out of home industry with you for several years, and I even went to aviation for a while. And the reason I gravitated always to out of home is because I feel like it's a creative medium. It wasn't held so accountable back in the day when we were working together. You could get creative with the medium, make take the plunge, do something a bit different, and no one was really going to penalize you for doing it. So you could take those risks creatively, not only with the message, but also with to your point with Gooder, like what do you do with the format? Like there was a lot more leeway. Today, I feel like the challenge that Dovi and I would often face on our different sides of the coin is that, a 30-second TV ad cannot be retrofitted into every
Yes.
medium. And, the media landscape today is so fragmented. There is so many opportunities to drive that resonance with an audience that to do so, it's no longer about here's your campaign, now cut it down. It's about coming up with a narrative and developing the ecosystem around that narrative and leveraging those assets in the right moment, the right platform for the right audience. And that's how we drive resonance. Like a lot of what I work with my team is I said, do me a favor, get out of the whole archaic philosophy about reach and frequency with media. Like that has to go out the window. It has to be about relevant reach, like reaching the right audience in the right moment, building that relevance, and then the resonance, like making sure that message sings at that right moment of shifting a behavior. So we're trying to get out of archaic terminology and shift people into thinking like, and what used to be a medium is no longer a medium. Like Dov's company does influencers. Guess what? So do we. Dov will do content integration. Guess what? So will we. The lines are blurred. So if we don't start working more closely together and collaborating and figuring out what that human truth is, which creative drives, and then we figure out how do we bring that to life together. That if we don't do that, then I think we will not keep pace with the industry, which is moving so fast.
Yeah.
That's already been happening, right? I mean, that has been the change, like less sequential creative process. So it doesn't go from Joe's team to my team to the production team. It's now we're all together in a room because our timelines are crunched. We got to scale this thing very, very quickly. There's just no time for a sequential process to take place, and it's not efficient anyway. It's much better if I know up front what the media buy is going to be, so I can develop an idea to accommodate the media buy, as opposed to developing an idea in a vacuum that gets mapped onto whatever the existing media buy is. Those days, to Joe's point, are gone. I mean, you're still seeing it. Obviously, it's going to take time for a full transition, but it will be the companies that really create bespoke experiences at every single consumer touch point that still feels unified, but it also feels like completely customized for that moment. Those companies will just explode ahead. By comparison to a simple creative camp, the big idea that just goes everywhere.
Yeah, I love that. And so just as Joe has experienced, the rise of data has significantly helped her better plan, better buy, even in the out of home space with programmatic, the ability to buy audiences where they move. Where have you seen, Davi, on the creative side, where not only now is Joe bringing better, more efficient media types because of that understanding the audience, where have you dove deep into the use of data to create more effective creative when you're talking to specific, very niche targeted audiences?
Yeah, Joe and I debate this all the time. The value is data the new creative? Is data the new big idea? Because if you have the data to justify X, why would you do anything else? I hear that, but I also feel that we use data as a tool to enhance our campaigns, to make arguments more robust, but it's never the big bang. Like it's AI and data is never going to be the what if question. And if it does propose that what if question because it's generated purely through data, then it will be backwards looking almost by definition. The big idea still needs to be unpredictable, and predictive models, big data can't give you that idea, but it can give you rocket fuel to make it as robust and bulletproof as possible, for sure.
So we always have a bit of, I agree with Job ultimately, but we talk about this a lot because I still feel like data plays a tremendous role. I know it doesn't come with the final idea, that's an evolution of what you learn from the data. But, when Dovi was mentioning earlier, we both come into the house, but from different doors. Well, more and more, you're going to see us both coming through the front door. There's a foundational data set that we both need to depend on in order to move things along. I'm not sure whether you were at CES this year, Ian. You were there. So I don't know whether you saw, like, it's for the past few years, Dassault Systems on the health floor, they've come up with their digital twins. So that digital twin, they've been using it at Boston Children's Hospital to help with pediatric cardiac surgery. And so it helps to test and to refine the process for surgery. And it's actually helping to improve outcomes for children with congenital heart defects. So there is a possibility that in the future there will be this synthetic modeling of these creative ideas that are more out there and grounded in data, but taking things that step further, but a way to model that confidence in the idea. So I think data is playing a role. I agree with Dob. I don't think it's going to be the final idea, but I think it's going to get us more confidence as we go down that path.
And I'm very dubious of like that part of again, not data. embellishing a campaign, reinforcing it, creating the girding and the infrastructure to make your argument robust completely. But, using data as any sort of indicator about the effectiveness of a campaign, which hasn't launched yet, is, I think, very, very dangerous. The analogy that I use, that I've given to Jo before, is the Dove campaign for real beauty, for example, and what the data suggested about a beauty brand showing older women with wrinkly skin or bigger women, that a beauty brand should never do that. That is absolute. But it's become one of the most enduring and successful beauty campaigns because it did say what if, and it didn't listen to data, and data just made it a more robust campaign. But the creative was never tainted by the naysaying of whatever data produced.
Yeah, and I believe in a lot of people followed suit with that too. And that goes to my other question, both on the media and the creative side, is it's oftentimes in a predictive world. And that's kind of my fear with AI, which we can dive into AI. It's funny because my kids, Jo, I don't know about you, our kids are around the same age. My kids can spot AI like that.
Yeah.
But in a world of like predictive consistency of creative, I feel like our brains are just like going back to our natural state. We want things to be unpredictable. We want that aha moment, like, whoa, I was not expecting that. And I feel like Dove kind of broke the mold there. But more and more brands, I talk about this all the time. It's great. Like, algorithms are great, social media, predictable ads for specific people that visit these sites, blah, blah, blah. But it's the anti-algorithm side of things. What is the media that's going to disrupt that algorithm? I heard something at Cannes this past summer, Jo, that just blew my mind. And it was a very large agency, very head of strategy, senior person. And she flat out said, like, hey, remember the days of how we had to buy more media to offset fraud and bots? She was like, now we need to buy more media to offset the algorithm. And I'm like, but why? Like, why can't we break that mold? So I guess my rambling is more around like the unpredictable side, the anti-algorithm. That has to get people and brands excited and really start to challenge both of your principles within the agencies and brands that you represent.
100%. I mean, for us, it's about looking beyond the spots and the schedule. Like, it's about where do we appear in the right environments where we can find the people we're trying to influence, but do it in more native ways, like whether it's a spot, part of the episode in General Hospital is an endemic space where a health brand might appear. It could be something like being associated with the Grammys or other environments that intersect the cultural moments but are not your traditional spots in space. I mean, we've been doing that for quite a while. I'll never forget, I worked on a wine brand in New Zealand, and I was working with American Airline Publishing Group when they had magazines, and instead of just buying a place in the magazine, I worked with American Express concierge and figured out how do we build a tour through New Zealand winery, selling a case of wine on the back of me doing a media schedule. Like, building an experience, going beyond the spots and space to find a way to build that cultural connection. I think that's where we have to go. It is also going to help us with regulations. Regulations are getting tighter. What can you do with a TV ad? Well, what you used to be able to do, now you've got to go slower with the ISI. You've got to make sure there's a box behind the ISI. The restrictions are real, and they are robbing creativity in some capacity. And so doing things differently, getting out of the 30-second spot, allows us to get more creative with media, with the message, and try and find a way to beat the algorithm.
I felt you, Davi, just like deflate as Jo was talking about like restrictions and all those things.
The ISI, I don't get up for ISI. No, I'm psyched for that. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the ad.
Yeah.
Pause, rewind, play.
Right.
Again. There are certainly restrictions, and to your earlier point regarding AI, I think that is. obviously a factor in terms of production, undeniable. But to your point, I feel like we're at the sugar rush phase of this whole thing. More impressed with, oh my God, it can edit, it can automatically color. I have 100 voices that I can use in any language. All of that incredibly impressive, but you know, the figures still feel somewhat dead, and lifeless, and we're not quite there yet in terms of full ups, but we are in terms of generating backgrounds, putting your essential talent in different situations where you still have an element of humanity, but you have far more flexibility to create unique storytelling. I think that we're reconciling exactly what the sweet medium is to make things feel authentic, but create efficient work for our clients.
Yeah. So let's jump over to that creative and media alignment, specifically, Joe, like around the healthcare world, right? So from a creative perspective, it gets kind of tricky. You're balancing emotion and you're trying to capture the attention, but you're also having to educate people that, maybe they're scared, maybe it's a moment where it's like, I'm unclear about this. How does that challenge? Because I think this is like the perfect Joe Dobby like world here, because it's like there's a balance of the right place, right time for the media, but it's also you want to respect, maybe it's a certain type of disease or ailing thing that happens where you have to spend a short amount of time, but you're kind of respecting the consumer in this volatile yet confusing moment of their lives.
Yeah, Dovi and I often speak about this, that awareness needs hope, consideration needs clarity, and that decision making needs the reassurance that you're making the right decision. So having that right tonality is super important, and it's not only reflected in the message but also in the channels that you choose. But again, when we find ways to express those thoughts together and take a more creative measure on how we look at the media, that's where it really comes to life. Like social media obviously plays a critical role in being part of the community conversation. More broadcast media like out of home and video tends to play a bigger role in building that hope and awareness of the messaging. And so there's different channels obviously that work harder at different stages, but more and more today, it's blurring. If I just do a standard video ad in social media, I want to drive awareness. But if all of a sudden I've got a celebrity, an influencer in that medium, I'm truncating that funnel. I'm delivering awareness, but I'm also driving that consideration. And so there's more and more thought to how do we look at media and creative combined to more efficiently deliver that, but in an empathetic and meaningful way based on what the brand's ambitions are.
Yeah. I'd say it's become more important than ever for creative media to align early and often. Our job, the creative department's job, is just to find whatever that human truth that's defined early on, to bring that to life in the best possible way, right? Theoretically, but if we can't figure out in partnership with media how to put that campaign in the right environment where people are most receptive to it, or put it into meaningful moments in people's lives, we don't really have a viable campaign. Now you're seeing collaborations between media and creative that didn't exist just a few short years ago, and it's leading to way better and unexpected creative, like whether it's partnerships between an English football club and an Alzheimer's drug to swap out the names on the jerseys and make everyone in the stadium confused so that they can really understand the experience of someone suffering with Alzheimer's. That is an example of media and creative coming together in a unique way to deliver a message to an audience that wouldn't have been exposed to it's a brand new landscape with tremendous opportunity there. But again, the most important thing is that early collaboration leads to magic downstream.
What does it look like for both on the creative and the media side? Like, there's so much media out there. Again, going back, there used to be four pillars that's all you bought. So it was like 30-second TV commercial. What is the responsibility of media owners to continue to educate? Not only, we spend often, all the media owners, Meta, Amazon, the out-of-home companies, the TV companies, streaming companies, it's our responsibility to kind of educate upstream for the strategy side. But on the creative side, Debbie, what would you expect? Like, kind of like the call today, or how can media owners do a better job? And what I love about, and I'm a bit partial to out of home, but I also love social, we kind of evolve with the creative. It's like, oh, you want to put a waterfall on a billboard, the one recently in LA that I absolutely love, drawing a blank on Percy Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we get to evolve with the creative. It's like, hey, what do you want to do? And then we'll push the limits. But some medias are more confined. Where does the responsibility of the media owners lie in educating both of your principals?
So I think that there's two things. There's one is just educating about the available options and how they function. Back in the day, there was, when I guess the internet was just in its infancy during the dot-com boom, like you had a brand new set of platforms, digital platforms that were native to a younger audience. We brought them into the agency world, but we mapped our old model onto them. So we told them, okay, you know how to use Facebook and you know how to use Instagram. Take our campaign and map it onto those, instead of asking them, look, you're native to this platform, how would you take this campaign and embellish it, or does it even belong on this platform? So a lot of those young creatives didn't want to stay and work at an agency that was using an old model. They left, they started their own places, they went and consulted elsewhere. It's what we were saying earlier, like we weren't using our expertise in a way that was cohesive and complemented one another. We were staying in our respective lanes and repeating the same old model. I think there's also a tremendous opportunity for media to maybe create new platforms based on what the creatives suggest. So there may be an opportunity for reverse osmosis, if you want, like where creatives are suggesting, wouldn't it be great if we had this sort of thing to bring our campaign to life? A media platform that doesn't necessarily exist in the online or offline space, but it would complement this idea. And sometimes you have had that, right? Media that is developed bespoke for a campaign to help bring it to life. When those sorts of back and forths happen, I think that we have the opportunity to put work out there that just feels so, it doesn't feel like advertising, it just feels like showing up for your people.
It's funny because I strongly believe in cross-fertilizing talent. Like even within my team now, I have 2 out-of-home natives. And in fact, my client, like me, also spent a stint in out of home. So I think that really brings a different perspective to a team, whilst they may be going towards a different discipline than one that they were most familiar with. When someone's got the ability to think in a certain way and meets expectation, and you can challenge them and know. And I feel like out of home always drew creativity, and I love bringing that into the team. And so I agree with Dov, like rather than always teaching them how to act in this environment, I think people come to the party and they've got a lot to bring. And if they're not bringing a lot from their background, they're the wrong person for your team.
Yeah. And I've been in this space for 20 years now, and I've seen that evolution, and nothing makes me more excited when you show up at an agency where it's like, hey, this is the creative team, or hey, the client's here, because that's where I believe true collaboration. And that goes into kind of my last question for both of you is, the challenges of storytelling. Like we've talked about it, it's very niche audiences. Like what you're going to create and buy, the two of you on TikTok is going to look significantly different than what I have to say Bookface, because I'm not on the Bookface anymore. But each media is different, but the storytelling needs to be kind of flow, because I wish I could live in a world where, and I'm sure you both feel this way, where you don't recognize media types. You just truly get to, like I ask my wife all the time, I'm like, hey, what'd you see on the media side today? She's like, what do you mean media? She's like, I saw this really cool ad in a magazine, and then I saw it on TikTok, and then actually I was in Lululemon, and there was that, the digital screen, and I was like, that felt so good from our perspective that it was like a true storytelling moment. Um, that evolution is newer. And how did the two of you plan by and create around consumer journeys in such a complex space?
I actually love that anecdote, Ian, because that is exactly what I would love to. Like, I'm not a media person because I love numbers. I'm media because I love a challenge, and I understand the world of media, but being creative with it, I mean, that's the ultimate. And I do believe we are a narrative ecosystem. Like, you shouldn't be able to say this is media, this is creative. It's a campaign. This is what I was exposed to, and it was right because it was in the right place at the right time with the right message, and it doesn't matter where it was. Like, hopefully you don't remember where it was, just remember it made an impact on me, and that is what it was designed to do. So I hope we do get to that world, and I think the blurring of lines is going to help us get there. And to your point about what is the onus on media partners in this, I'll tell you, more and more we're doing creative workshops that involve media, creative, and PR. And I see that just growing. It's not about educating us as media people, it's about educating us all on how we can use a given platform to amplify our message towards the brand objectives. And I think we all have an accountability towards that.
Yeah.
Mm.
All the pressure's on you, Davi, by the way, because if Joe's planning the perfect storybook media campaign you got to perform here.
It's very true. But yeah, you are seeing like more bespoke experiences for the media buy. There has to be, because you stand out if you have clumsily mapped on your limited campaign onto a complex media buy. It will be counterproductive. The clients will notice it, especially now when there's so many opportunities to create very rich experiences with your consumers at every single touch point. That doesn't mean that the campaign will look disparate, but you see many, I don't know, like Progressive Insurance, right? You might have a Dr. Rick spot, you might have a Flow spot, you might have a this, you might have a... So it's one campaign, a single tonality, but depending on who you are and where you are, they're going to pull different levers. And that's the beauty of, a limited media buy just means that the media has to do a lot more of the actual storytelling. The placement, where it is part of the story, so that the creative doesn't have to work quite as hard.
Yeah. And so the last topic, just to touch on, culturally relevant has become like the most intense thing. Like, everyone wants to be... Super Bowl's coming up, has already passed once this podcast drops, but another massive thing that I think from a cultural perspective in the US and North America will be the largest sporting event that has ever taken place on US soil in Canada and Mexico, FIFA World Cup. It is going to be enormous. From a media perspective, Joe, thoughts around these massive events and how do you break through the clutter? Is it a Super Bowl ad? Is it a FIFA ad? Or do you sneak in another way? And Davi, for you, how do you stand out in such a crowded space that is the Super Bowl, that is FIFA, and insert any major event that's happening from a cultural perspective?
So from my perspective, Dovi and I were talking about it, that when we talk about creative, and it used to be the core determinant of success was about, is it buzzworthy? Is it water cooler conversation? I mean, Super Bowl is probably one of the last cultural events on the US broadcast calendar that will allow you permission to make that one of its critical determinants for success. But other than that, I think that success is obviously being determined through other measures today. And from a media perspective, we are trying to get tighter with understanding which tent poles are those cultural intersections that will make a difference. But you can't just put a spot in one of those hero moments and claim success. It really is about what you do around that event, the talent you use, the amplification you do, how you create the buzz, not only in the moment, but beyond the moment, and carry that momentum on your journey towards success. So for right now, that's how we look at it. There's nowhere where we're doing a big tent pole moment where there isn't an amplification strategy around that, and that is critical. And that's where other media play a tremendous role in breaking down that campaign message to the parts that will resonate in the various moments with the key audiences.
Yep, that's strong.
Yeah. I'm still a sucker for a good 60 or 30-second spot. I love film, and so I will religiously watch Super Bowl advertising every single year. I love the craft, I love the medium, I love the storytelling. But to Joe's point, it is not like it cannot be this sole thing that you put all of your hopes and dreams in anymore, because your audience is so much more fragmented than it used to be. Yes, that is the last form of mass advertising, where we treat audiences as a generic consumer. But, we know that beyond the Super Bowl, the audiences are complex and different touch bases need to be in place, and the campaign needs to flex to them. That often means that the action or the creative insight isn't going to be on the spot or even in the game. It might be subversive. It might invite you to watch the game simultaneously over here, so you can have a different perspective of what's going on, and the brand can play a role that it I think that Oreos does this with the black and white stripes for refereeing and ref calls, and so you watch the game and there's a connection. So I think that there will be tons of opportunities for creative executions that move away from the traditional media in terms of how you would introduce yourself in those big games and those moments.
Yeah, and it's got to live on forever. And I think those brands are the most successful, is where it's beyond just Super Bowl Sunday, as you start to see that little guy or icon or something continue to show up throughout your next few months. So this is a blast. It went by too fast, and next time I'm going to add my brother, and we're going to be the four squares.
Love it.
Joe and I will team up against Davi, you, and Eric. But
Family feud.
yeah, a feud. Look, this has been such a treat for me. I love the fact that the two of you have kind of fed off of each other your entire career. Joe, you clearly have inspired Davi to dive deep in the space, and you've obviously been super successful. I know your parents have to be incredibly proud of where you've both have accomplished in the agency space. That is at times very difficult, but you guys have both beautifully laid out like the complex evolution of media. It's just a fun challenge. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah. We're all very proud of how far Joe has come.
And Dov.
What we thought, it's incredible. Miracles happen.
Yes.
We're waiting to see. I love it. Well, thank you guys both. This has been a blast. Hopefully you guys get in an Uber, go see each other. You're not that far away from each other.
I agree.
All right.
Thank you, Ian.
All right, guys. Thank you all so much.
Take care.
Take
Bye.
care.